for anyone. Oh. No cash.
All right, let's talk about autism and aggression. So why does it happen? In this video, it appears as if this child's on the spectrum and he's probably at about a level 3, which means that he's most likely nonverbal and he's not able to communicate in traditional methods. And I looked in the comment section that a lot of people were, had opinions on this, and people don't realize that this child, he probably doesn't hate his mom. He's not upset at his mom, but when you can't communicate in traditional methods, especially around meal times, you can't let somebody know, I'm hungry, I'm not hungry, I'm full. It leads to anxiety and irritability. And the highest form of that is agitation. So in this situation, when you equip the parent and the child with tools to help them improve their communication, you normally see a reduction in the amount of aggression. So I hope this helps.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but you're not in love with them. You're just hyperfixating on them because of your ADHD and your low dopamine. Bye.
Oh my goodness. Where was this advice years ago? How come nobody ever explained to me that ADHD is a condition which means that it's hard to regulate your mood and your attention? So when you do find something that you like, when you do find something that you're good at, when you do find something that captures your attention, you tend to hyperfixate on that one thing. And sometimes it can be a person. It can be a person. And when it's a person, it gets tricky because a lot of times, in the talking stage, you'll be talking to this person and, you say you're in love with them. Every day we're hanging out. Every day we're having fun. We're having the time of our lives. And then one day, I don't know if it's about a month in or about 6 weeks in. For me, it's around like 6 and 7 weeks, around that time frame where you realize that, oh my goodness, I do like this person, but I'm kind of returning back to who I am for real. And I don't have the energy to keep up with hanging out with them every single day. And you feel bad because as you're pulling back, sometimes they're falling more in love with you. And then you're like, oh my goodness, am I a bad person? Am I a bad person? You're not a bad person. You just have ADHD. And this condition explains the behaviors that you exhibit. I mean, guys, ladies and gentlemen, this is some deep stuff. What a video. What a video.
Do you know you have 30 minutes? 30, yes.
This video is a good example and a reminder that no two neurodivergent people are the same. Of course, we know autism to be autism spectrum disorder, so people understand that this is a spectrum. There's differences on both ends. But also with ADHD, I also look at ADHD as a condition that it's a spectrum as well. You can have an ADHD individual who is very hyperactive, and you can have an ADHD individual who is more so inattentive. You can have somebody who interrupts people. You can have somebody who zones out. It's a spectrum. And I think the whole point of this video, at least what I got from it, is that as a neurodivergent individual, you have to find your people, but it's also good to find people who are complementary to you. So if you have ADHD and you struggle with time blindness, you may need a friend who's on the spectrum and has autism and can keep things together for you. So just keep that in mind.
If you're dating someone and then you find out down the line that they're autistic, I want to share some advice that sounds simple in theory, but in practice is extremely helpful. Be direct. Please be super direct and super literal.
When I posted the joke about how I prefer autistic women to neurotypical women, it wasn't just a joke, it was the real deal truth. You have to understand that autism, I've explained this before, but autism just means that the way that you communicate with the world is different from how neurotypical people communicate with the world. So when you're autistic, you have this tendency to be literal. So whatever you say, you actually mean it. And some people look at that as a flaw, as something that's not ideal, and the person might struggle in social situations, but I love it. When what you say is what you mean, it makes dating so much easier. So people might say that autistic people don't have a right, but I think that this is the best way to communicate. So just a tip, like you said, when you're dating somebody who is autistic, be literal, because they'll be literal right back with you, and we could solve a lot of communication problems. It could all be so simple. In the words of Lauryn Hill, it could all be so simple.
Why autistic people just know when somebody hates them. We spend so much time trying to be liked by neurotypicals, trying to fit in. So we are so good at pattern recognition. And on top of it, we are constantly watching other people for nonverbal.
I like to remind my autistic patients that even though you may not have a lot of friends, the friends that you do have now, these people are actually your people. They're actually your friends. So keep in mind that the same way that a blind person will have to tap into other senses, or somebody who is deaf, they tap into the other senses, an autistic individual who has struggled in social situations their whole life, who's had to mask, will naturally adapt and learn how to fit in by watching people and studying the things that people do. Oh, how do people act when they're frustrated? How do people act when they're genuine? How do people act when they're faking something? And these are the things that you can use to let you know, oh, is this person my actual friend? Or are they just here to laugh at me, or just because they're bored? And this is something that a lot of us struggle with, where we have people in our circle who aren't our actual people, but because we weren't able to pick up on it, we have to learn the hard way, unfortunately.
She wasn't trying to figure out what I do. She was trying to figure out who I am. It was like I was in a double-blind experiment, and I loved it. A new bar has been set, guys, okay? If they're not asking you what you remember from your 18th birthday, we don't.
Go find you an autistic woman. Fellas, I cracked the code. Go find you an autistic woman. I have jokes about this, but this is not a joke. This is real deal truth. If you want somebody who's genuine, someone who cares about you, somebody who asks you questions about you, somebody who wants to take things to the next level, they want to figure out how you take, what makes you upset, what makes you happy. They ask you the in-depth questions that really lets you know, this person really cares about me. Go find you an autistic woman. I told my homeboy about this. I kid you not. And he went on a date with an autistic lady. I said, how did it go? He sent me back that meme. That meme that goes, I want to brag about it. I want to tie the knot. I want to show you off. I want to show you off. I'm assuming that the date went well. And I hope to be at the wedding. And hopefully he can put me on one of her friends who's also autistic. We can keep this party going.
Steve, we're going to interrupt you in the middle of a sentence because we forget what we're going to know.
All right, so one of the more embarrassing parts about ADHD is this compulsive desire to interrupt people and to jump in mid-conversation when it's not your turn to talk. I've experienced this my whole life, and one thing that can be very helpful is watching other people's lips as they're talking, because we just have that desire to just interrupt and just say what we have to say before we forget, because we feel like we're going to forget, so we have to say it, not realizing that this is something that's seen as rude. You could lose friends over it, and sometimes people don't explain this to us. And as a neurodivergent individual, it's already hard to make and keep friends. So I think it's helpful to, first of all, be kind to yourself. Understand that you have a condition which makes it hard for you to regulate your mood and your attention. And as you learn these tips, we're going to do a little bit better. We'll do better and better and better. And hopefully we can learn to let people know that, okay, all right, we're not trying to be rude. We're not trying to overtalk you or interrupt you on purpose. It's just something that I deal with, but I've learned through skills and through videos like this. I've learned how to manage my impulses and just, take a beat and pause and let other people speak, and then I'll hop in. One thing that can also be helpful is having friends who don't, beat you up too much for this. Like having a friend who can just say, hey, you're doing that thing again. Oh, thank you. It's not what we say, but it's how we say it. Kindness is important.
But he did bring me back a rock and a crab claw, which is a crazy way for him to tell me that he's got autism.
All right, so collecting rocks is not a sign of autism. But, however, collecting rocks could be a byproduct of an autistic trait that somebody exhibits. So follow me on this. If you're autistic and you struggle with sensory overload, collecting rocks could help you. It could put you at ease. It could be a form of stimming. If you're autistic and you can't relate to a lot of different interests that people have, but you love rocks, that could be your special interest. It could be a special interest. If you heard about rocks and you watch a couple of videos and all of a sudden for the next 24 to 48 hours or maybe the next 2 weeks, you start collecting rocks and you gave it up, maybe it was just a hyperfixation. So while collecting rocks is not a sign of autism, it's something that you could do due to autistic traits that you may exhibit. I hope that makes sense. Trauma changes you as a person, and it leads to so many things. One of those things is this sixth sense as a neurodivergent individual, which is essentially just CPTSD. And CPTSD is sustained trauma that you've experienced over and over, year after year. And as a neurodivergent individual, you see this when you're young. And let's say you have ADHD and you realize that, wow, I'm in the 6th grade and how come nobody's ever invited me to a birthday party? Or if you're an autistic child growing up and you realize that you're always by yourself, people don't understand you, people are making fun of you, they're picking on you, they're bullying you. After you've experienced so much trauma over and over throughout the years, you learn people's cadences and you learn how to recognize when somebody doesn't like you or if this person's your person. It's helpful to have these tools, but at the same time, you can sometimes be hypervigilant where you're always on the lookout, trying to see if somebody's a safe person, trying to see if these people are my friends, trying to see if these people are laughing with me or are they laughing at me. It's a difficult way to live, but however, we can look on the bright side and say, okay, I've gone through all this. How can I make this work for me? And we can look at the positives. Now that you can understand who your people are and who your people aren't, you can make the decisions that you have to make to separate yourself from these people. And I know this is very difficult. This is very difficult. And as you unmask, you have got to be kind to yourself. You have to be kind to yourself because you realize that unmasking is you getting closer and closer to your most authentic version of yourself. At the same time, you're losing all of these friends because a lot of the friends that you have, and when I say friends, I gotta do this, but a lot of the friends that you have or have had were just people who were capitalizing off of your lack of awareness despite who they were. And it's a tough way to live. So that's why I always preach being kind to yourself. You have got to be kind to yourself. You have to be your own biggest cheerleader. And anything that you struggle with or the things that you fear, one by one, we have to start addressing those. If you are afraid of being by yourself, and because of that, you put yourself in situations where you're around people who don't have your best interests in mind, or you're too afraid to be by yourself. So you start hanging out with, or you start dating people who don't have your best interests in mind. That's going to lead to a different type of pain. So pain is inevitable. We have to experience it one way or another. But I'd rather you experience the pain on the front end of having to sever those relationships and understanding people for who they are and not trying to fight against that. We can't fight against these things. We have to be kind to ourselves. You can't fight against it. The best you can do is understand that, okay, this person has done this. Oh, wow. I thought this person was my friend. It hurts me that they have exhibited these behaviors, and now I'm going to have to separate myself from them. At the same time, you have to give yourself space to grieve a friendship that has run its course, to grieve a relationship that has run its course, and always understand that it's okay to lose people, but it's never okay to lose yourself. And if you find yourself in a place where you feel like you've lost yourself, just know that you can get yourself back. But it starts with a positive self-talk and that reinforcement of pouring into yourself, the reinforcement of knowing that you're somebody who's worthy of love, attention, and respect. So this is very difficult. And as somebody who's also neurodivergent, I have ADHD. Sometimes I say I had ADHD, but I still have it. But as somebody who is neurodivergent and I've grown up and I've had to deal with all these traumas along the way, I know how difficult it can be. So once again, I've got to stress, be kind to yourself. Take your time. Be kind to yourself. And just understand that losing yourself is not an option. I love y'all. You can do it. And I'm rooting for y'all.